They say blood is thicker than water, but they never warned me that blood could also be poison. My name is Maya Chen, and this is the story of how my own sister destroyed my life in 60 seconds, and how I spent the next year methodically taking back everything she stole, plus interest. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from, and if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. The rain was hammering against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Sterling & Associates when I first realized my entire world had been built on lies. I was 28, sitting in that mahogany-paneled conference room, wearing my best black dress, the one I'd bought specifically for Dad's funeral 3 weeks earlier. The fabric still smelled faintly of the lilies from his service. Mr. Sterling, our family attorney for over 2 decades, cleared his throat and adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses. His hands trembled slightly as he opened the sealed envelope containing my father's will. Dad had been worth $14 million when he died, a fortune built from his tech startup that revolutionized cloud storage systems. I'd worked alongside him for 5 years, learning every aspect of the business, preparing to take over his legacy. "Before we begin," Mr. Sterling said, his voice unusually strained, "I want everyone to understand that this will was updated just 6 months ago." Mr. Marcus Chen was very specific about his intentions. My sister Sophia sat across from me, her perfectly manicured fingers folded in her lap. She wore a Chanel suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, her blonde hair styled in waves that cascaded over her shoulders. Sophia had always been the beautiful one, the charming one, the one who could walk into any room and own it within minutes. At 30, she was everything I wasn't, effortlessly elegant, socially magnetic, and apparently, Dad's favorite. But I wasn't worried. Dad and I had spent countless late nights in his study, discussing business strategies, reviewing quarterly reports, and planning the company's future. He'd told me repeatedly that I was his successor, that everything he'd built would one day be mine. Sophia had never shown the slightest interest in the company. She was too busy with her art gallery, her charity galas, her endless stream of wealthy boyfriends. Mr. Sterling began reading. The first few paragraphs were standard legal language, but then came the bombshell that would shatter my understanding of everything I thought I knew. To my daughter Sophia Chen, I leave the entirety of Chen Technologies, including all assets, intellectual property, and controlling shares, valued at approximately $14 million. Sophia has demonstrated exceptional business acumen and vision that will ensure the company's continued success. The words hit me like a physical blow. My vision blurred, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. Sophia? The woman who couldn't balance her own checkbook? Who had never attended a single board meeting? Who thought a P&L statement was some kind of personal loan? But Mr. Sterling wasn't finished. To my daughter Maya Chen, I leave the sum of $50,000 and my personal effects, with the hope that she will use this fresh start to find her own path in life, independent of the family business. $50,000. Out of $14 million, less than 0.5% of Dad's estate. I felt like I was drowning in that stuffy conference room, the walls closing in around me. Sophia's reaction was perfectly calculated. She gasped, brought her hand to her chest, and turned to me with what appeared to be genuine shock. "Maya, I had no idea. Dad never said anything to me about this. I'm so sorry." But I caught something in her eyes. A flicker of satisfaction so brief that anyone else would have missed it. I didn't miss it. I grew up with Sophia Chen. I knew what she was saying. "There must be some mistake," I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. "Mr. Sterling, my father and I discussed his will many times. He always said the company would be mine." Mr. Sterling's expression was genuinely sympathetic. "Maya, I understand this is shocking, but your father was very clear about his wishes. He came to me 6 months ago with specific instructions. He said Sophia had been working behind the scenes, developing innovative marketing strategies and building valuable business relationships. He was impressed by her dedication. Marketing strategies? Business relationships? I'd been handling all of the company's marketing for 3 years. Sophia had been to exactly 2 company events in her entire life, and both times she'd spent the evening flirting with potential investors rather than discussing business. "Can I see the documents he referenced?" I asked. "The work Sophia supposedly did?" Mr. Sterling shuffled through his papers. I'm afraid those documents are confidential business materials. Your father provided them as justification for his decision, but they're not part of the public record. Sophia leaned forward, her voice dripping with false concern. Maya, I know this is hard to accept, but maybe Dad saw something in me that I didn't even see in myself. He was always so perceptive about people's hidden potential. Hidden potential. The phrase made my stomach turn. Sophia had hidden potential the way a shark had hidden teeth, only visible when she was about to destroy something. I'd like to contest this will, I said firmly. Something isn't right here. Mr. Sterling shook his head slowly. Maya, I have to advise you that your father anticipated this possibility. The will contains an ironclad no contest clause. If you challenge it in any way, you forfeit even $50,000. You'd walk away with nothing. The trap was perfect. Fight and lose everything, or accept the scraps and try to rebuild my life from nothing. Either way, Sophia won. As we left the law office, Sophia caught up with me in the parking garage. The click of her Louboutin heels echoed off the concrete walls. Maya, wait. I want you to know that I plan to honor Dad's vision for the company. You're welcome to stay on in your current role. Maybe even a small promotion. I was thinking Assistant Vice President of Operations. Assistant Vice President. I had been the Chief Operating Officer. I had been Dad's right hand. Now she was offering me a glorified secretary position in the company I'd helped build. How generous of you, I said, not bothering to hide the venom in my voice. Sophia's mask slipped for just a moment, and I saw the cold calculation underneath. Maya, I understand you're upset, but this is reality now. You can either accept it gracefully and maintain some dignity, or you can make this ugly for both of us. I'd prefer if we could remain close as sisters. Close as sisters. The woman who had just stolen my entire inheritance wanted us to remain close. That night, I sat in my small downtown apartment, the one I'd been saving to move out of once I took over the company, and tried to process what had happened. Everything I'd worked for, everything I'd planned, had evaporated in a single afternoon. But more than that, I'd discovered that my father, the man I'd idolized and trusted completely, had apparently seen me as nothing more than a disappointment. Or had he? A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. The more I thought about it, the more wrong everything felt. Dad's sudden change of heart, Sophia's mysterious business contributions, the convenient no contest clause. It was like a puzzle with too many pieces that didn't fit. I pulled out my laptop and started researching. If Sophia had really been contributing to the company, there would be evidence. Email trails, meeting records, documented communications. I'd been managing Dad's calendar and correspondence for years. I knew where to look. What I found instead was something far more interesting. 3 months before Dad updated his will, Sophia had hired a private investigator named Derek Morrison. The invoice I found in her email, she'd always been careless with passwords, was for background research and documentation services. Background research on what? Or more accurately, on whom? I kept digging. Sophia's credit card statements showed regular payments to a marketing consultant named Jennifer Walsh, payments that started exactly 6 months ago. The same Jennifer Walsh who had apparently created the innovative marketing strategies that had so impressed Dad. But Jennifer Walsh didn't exist. Her business license was fake, her website had been created 4 weeks ago, and her professional references led to disconnected phone numbers. Sophia hadn't been building a business case for inheriting Dad's company. She'd been building a fictional narrative, complete with forged documents and fabricated evidence. My sister hadn't just stolen my inheritance. She'd orchestrated an elaborate con game, using Dad's trust and love to rewrite our family's entire future. And as I sat there in my cramped apartment at 2 a.m, staring at the evidence of her deception, I realized something that would change everything. If Sophia could steal my identity as Dad's chosen successor, then I could steal something from her in return. Something much more valuable than money. I could steal her entire life. The rain had stopped, and through my window I could see the city lights stretching out toward the horizon. Somewhere out there, in her penthouse apartment, Sophia Chen was probably celebrating her victory, planning how to spend her $14 million. She had no idea that her little sister had just declared war. Walking into Chen Technologies the next morning felt like entering a house that was no longer mine, even though I still had my keycard and parking space. The familiar glass lobby, with its sleek modern furniture and the company motto etched in chrome letters, "Innovation through Unity," now seemed to mock me. Unity. What a joke. I made it exactly 3 steps into the building before encountering my first reminder of the New World Order. Janet Rodriguez, who had been Dad's executive assistant for 12 years, rushed toward me with an expression I'd never seen before, pity mixed with barely concealed embarrassment. "Maya, honey," she whispered, glancing around nervously, "I'm so sorry about everything. I had no idea what was in that will." Before I could respond, the elevator doors opened with their familiar chime, and out stepped Sophia. But this wasn't Sophia from the law office yesterday. This version wore a charcoal gray power suit that screamed authority, her hair pulled back in a severe bun, carrying herself with the confidence of someone who owned everything in sight. Which, technically, she now did. "Maya," she called out, her voice carrying across the lobby. "Perfect timing. I was hoping to catch you early." She approached with the predatory grace of a leopard, her smile bright enough to power the building. Behind her walked someone I didn't recognize, a tall man in an expensive suit with the kind of face that belonged on corporate magazine covers. "I'd like you to meet James Bradford," Sophia continued, her hand possessively on his arm. "He's going to be our new chief financial officer. James, this is my sister Maya. She's been handling some of our operational tasks." Some of our operational tasks. I had been the chief operating officer. I had streamlined our entire production process, negotiated our biggest supplier contracts, and increased efficiency by 37% over 2 years. Now I was being introduced as someone who handled some tasks. James extended his hand with a polite but dismissive smile. "Nice to meet you, Maya. Sophie's told me so much about your contributions to the company." Sophie. One day, my sister had acquired a CFO who called her by a nickname that no one in our family had ever used. And the way he said "contributions" made it clear that Sophia had already briefed him on my apparently limited role in the company's success. "Actually," I said, shaking his hand firmly, "I've been the COO for 3 years. I'd be happy to walk you through our operational systems." Sophia's laugh was like broken glass. "Oh, Maya, you're so sweet, but James has extensive experience with companies much larger than ours. I'm sure he'll figure things out just fine." The dismissal was swift and surgical. In front of a dozen employees who were now gathering in the lobby, pretending not to stare, Sophia had just relegated me to the status of a helpful, but ultimately unnecessary family member. "Speaking of which," Sophia continued, "I've been thinking about restructuring some of our departments. Maya, could you stop by my office around 10? We should discuss your new role." My new role. Not a promotion to assistant vice president as she'd mentioned yesterday. Now it was just a new role. Spoken with the kind of tone people use when they're about to deliver bad news gently. I spent the next 2 hours at my desk, watching as a parade of movers and contractors flowed in and out of what used to be Dad's office. Through the glass walls, I could see them removing his personal effects. His vintage globe, the signed baseball from his college days, the photo of me and him at my graduation from business school. Everything that made it his space was being systematically erased. By 9:30, the office had been completely transformed. Sophia's decorator had somehow managed to install new furniture overnight. A white lacquer desk that probably cost more than most people's cars, abstract art in silver frames, and a coffee machine that looked like it belonged on a spaceship. The nameplate on the door now read, "Sophia Chen, CEO," in elegant script. When 10 o'clock arrived, I knocked on the door that used to belong to my father. "Come in," Sophia's voice called out cheerfully. She was seated behind her new desk, perfectly framed by the city skyline visible through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Everything about the scene was designed to emphasize power and control. She gestured to a small chair positioned directly in front of her desk, the kind of setup typically reserved for disciplining children. "Maya, thank you for being so patient during this transition. I know it can't be easy, having everything change so quickly." She paused, as if waiting for me to thank her for her understanding. When I remained silent, she continued. I've been reviewing our current organizational structure, and I think there are some fantastic opportunities for you to contribute in a more meaningful way. More meaningful than being COO. This was going to be good. I'm creating a new position specifically for you, Special Projects Coordinator. You'll be responsible for organizing company events, managing our office supplies, and handling various administrative tasks that need attention. Office supplies. She was offering me a job managing office supplies. The salary would be $65,000 annually, she continued, which I think is quite generous for this type of role. Plus, you'd get to work closely with Janet in planning our quarterly meetings and holiday parties. I had been making $130,000 as COO. She was cutting my salary in half and asking me to plan holiday parties. Of course, Sophia added, leaning back in her chair with a satisfied smile. If you feel this position isn't quite the right fit, I completely understand. Sometimes family dynamics can make workplace relationships complicated. No one would blame you for wanting to pursue opportunities elsewhere. The message was crystal clear. Accept the humiliating demotion and 50% pay cut or leave entirely. Either way, she won. I need some time to think about it, I said carefully. Of course, take all the time you need. Well, not all the time. I'll need an answer by Friday so we can adjust our organizational chart accordingly. 5 days. She was giving me 5 days to decide between public humiliation and exile from the company I'd helped build. As I stood to leave, Sophia's voice stopped me at the door. Oh, and Maya, I hope you understand that this is nothing personal. It's just business. Dad always said that successful companies require clear hierarchies and well-defined roles. I'm just honoring his vision. Dad's vision. She was using our father's memory to justify destroying my career. The rest of the week was a masterclass in psychological warfare. Sophia's changes came fast and mercilessly. James Bradford began holding meetings with department heads, meetings I wasn't invited to, despite the fact that I'd been working with these people for years. When I tried to join our weekly operations review, Sophia smiled apologetically and explained that they were, quote, streamlining the meeting structure to focus on strategic priorities. Strategic priorities that apparently didn't include input from the person who actually understood how the company operated. By Wednesday, rumors were circulating that Sophia was considering selling the company to a larger competitor. When I confronted her about it, she looked genuinely surprised. Selling? Oh, Maya, where did you hear that? No, we're not selling. We're exploring strategic partnerships that could help us scale more effectively. It's quite exciting, actually. Strategic partnerships. Corporate speak for, I'm going to cash out and disappear. The final blow came on Thursday morning. I arrived at work to find my keycard had been deactivated. When I called security, they explained that there had been a, quote, system update, and I needed to get a new card from HR. At HR, Patricia Williams, who had processed my original employment paperwork 5 years ago, couldn't quite meet my eyes. Maya, I'm sorry, but there seems to be some confusion about your current status. According to our records, you're listed as a consultant rather than a permanent employee. A consultant? Patricia, you know that's not right. I've been a full-time employee here for 5 years. She pulled up something on her computer screen, frowning. I know, honey, but the system shows your employment status changed yesterday. You'll need to speak with Sophia about getting this corrected. When I finally tracked down Sophia, she was in the conference room with James and 3 people I didn't recognize. Expensive suits, leather portfolios, the unmistakable aura of investment bankers. She excused herself from the meeting and stepped into the hallway with me. Maya, you look upset. What's wrong? HR says I'm listed as a consultant. My keycard doesn't work. What's going on? Sophia's expression shifted to one of concerned confusion. Oh no, that must be a mistake. You haven't given me your answer about the Special Projects Coordinator position yet. Maybe there was a miscommunication with HR about your current status. A miscommunication. As if accidentally changing someone's employment status was the kind of thing that just happened. I'll get it sorted out right away, she promised. In the meantime, why don't you work from home today? I'll have Janet email you some projects you can handle remotely. The projects Janet emailed were insulting: researching venues for the company Christmas party, creating a spreadsheet of preferred caterers, organizing Dad's personal files that were being moved to storage. That evening, I sat in my apartment with a bottle of wine and Dad's personal files spread across my coffee table. Most of it was routine. Old tax documents, insurance papers, personal correspondence. But buried at the bottom of the box was something that made my blood run cold. A letter from Sophia to Dad, dated 8 months ago, handwritten on her personal stationery. "Daddy," it began, "I know we haven't talked much about business lately, but I've been doing some thinking about my future and the company's future. Maya has done a wonderful job, but I worry that she might not have the vision to take Chen Technologies to the next level. I'd love to discuss some ideas I have for expanding into new markets. Maybe we could have lunch next week? I have some proposals I think you'd find very interesting." The letter was signed with a heart and "Your loving daughter, Sophia." She hadn't just stolen my inheritance. She'd been planning this for almost a year, carefully poisoning Dad's perception of my abilities while positioning herself as the visionary daughter with big ideas. I poured another glass of wine and stared out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Sophia was probably celebrating another successful day of dismantling my life, piece by piece. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd left evidence. The key to understanding Sophia's plan wasn't hidden in corporate files or legal documents. It was sitting in plain sight on her vanity table, underneath a pile of Vogue magazines and expensive skincare products. I discovered this 3 weeks after my unofficial exile from Chen Technologies, during what Sophia thought was a reconciliation dinner at her penthouse. She'd called me that morning, her voice dripping with sisterly concern, asking if we could clear the air and discuss our relationship moving forward. The invitation felt like a trap, but I needed to get inside her apartment. I needed to understand exactly how deep her deception ran. "Maya, you look wonderful," she lied smoothly as she opened the door. I was wearing a Target dress and shoes I'd owned for 3 years, while she looked like she'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. The disparity between us had never felt more pronounced. Her penthouse was a monument to new money, marble floors, designer furniture, and abstract art that probably cost more than most people's homes. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the city, while soft jazz played from hidden speakers. Everything was perfectly curated, including Sophia herself. "I've been thinking a lot about our conversation at the office," she said, pouring 2 glasses of wine that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. "I may have been too hasty in my approach. Change is hard for everyone." Too hasty, as if systematically destroying my career was just a minor miscalculation in timing. "I want you to know that there's always a place for you at Chen Technologies," she continued. "Family is family, and I would never want you to feel like I don't value your contributions." We sat in her living room, making polite conversation about everything except the elephant in the room. Sophia played the role of concerned sister perfectly, asking about my apartment search, my job prospects, my emotional well-being. It was a performance worthy of an Academy Award. After an hour of carefully orchestrated small talk, she excused herself to take a phone call from an important investor. I had maybe 10 minutes to explore. Her home office was locked, but her bedroom was accessible. I slipped inside, my heart pounding as I quickly scanned the space. Everything was pristine. White silk bedding, a walk-in closet that looked like a boutique, and a vanity area that belonged in a luxury hotel. That's where I found her journal. It was tucked beneath a stack of fashion magazines, probably assumed to be invisible among the clutter of beauty products and designer perfumes. The leather-bound book was expensive, monogrammed with her initials in gold script. I flipped it open to a random page and immediately realized I'd stumbled onto something much bigger than inheritance fraud. The entry was dated 6 months before Dad's death. Phase 2 complete. Derek's investigation confirmed Maya's complete dependence on Dad's approval. Classic eldest daughter syndrome. She genuinely believes she's irreplaceable to him, which makes her vulnerable. Jennifer's fake marketing proposals are ready for presentation. Need to schedule more casual lunches with Dad to plant seeds about Maya's limitations. Phase 2. This wasn't improvised greed, it was a multi-stage operation. I flipped backward, finding entries that made my stomach turn. Dad still sees Maya as his protégé, but I'm noticing cracks. He's frustrated with her risk-averse approach to European expansion. Perfect opening to position myself as the bold visionary. Note: research aggressive growth strategies to impress him. And earlier, Maya's biggest weakness is her assumption that competence equals security. She's never learned to play politics because she's never had to. Dad handed her everything. Time to teach her that merit alone means nothing in the real world. But the most damaging entry was dated just 2 weeks after Dad's cancer diagnosis. Timing is everything. Dad's mortality scare has him thinking about legacy. Maya assumes this benefits her, but it actually creates opportunity. He's questioning everything now: his decisions, his priorities, his faith in the people around him. Perfect time to introduce doubt about Maya's long-term vision. She's too comfortable, too confident. I need to make him see her as stagnant while positioning myself as dynamic and forward-thinking. She had weaponized our father's cancer diagnosis. While I was focused on supporting him through treatment, on being the dependable daughter he could rely on, Sophia was manipulating his fear of mortality to steal my future. But the journal revealed something even more disturbing. The final entry, dated 3 days before Dad's will reading, contained a detail that shattered everything I thought I knew about my father's death. Dad's last round of treatment went better than expected. Doctors are optimistic about remission. This complicates the timeline significantly. May need to accelerate phase 3 before he has time to reconsider decisions made during his lowest point. The new will reflects his current mindset, but healthy Dad might revert to old preferences. Jennifer's documents need to be more convincing, will increase investment in fabricated portfolios. My father hadn't died from cancer complications, as we'd been told. He died from a heart attack, sudden and unexpected, just 2 weeks after receiving promising test results. 2 weeks after Sophia realized her window of opportunity was closing. The timing of his death had been convenient for exactly one person. Maya, is everything okay up there? Sophia's voice drifted up from downstairs. I quickly photographed the relevant journal pages with my phone and returned the book to its hiding place, my hands shaking as I tried to arrange the magazines exactly as I'd found them. Just looking for your bathroom, I called back, stepping into the hallway and flushing the toilet for authenticity. When I returned downstairs, Sophia was arranging cheese and crackers on an expensive platter, humming softly to herself. The domestic scene would have been touching if I hadn't just discovered evidence that she was a psychopath. Sorry about that interruption, she said brightly. International investors keep such odd hours. But I'm all yours now. She settled back into her chair with renewed energy, and I realized this entire evening had been leading to something specific. Maya, I've been thinking about our situation, and I have a proposition for you. Here it comes. I know the Special Projects Coordinator position wasn't what you were hoping for, and I understand why you turned it down. But what if we thought bigger? What if I offered you something more substantial? She leaned forward, her eyes bright with apparent enthusiasm. I'm launching a new initiative, Chen Foundation. It would be our family's charitable arm, focused on supporting women in technology. I'd like you to run it. A foundation. She was offering me a charity to manage while she controlled the $14 million company. The initial funding would be $5 million, she continued, and you'd have complete autonomy over the foundation's direction and activities. You could make a real difference in the world, Maya. Help other women achieve the success that, well, those circumstances prevented you from achieving. The insult was wrapped in beautiful paper and tied with a bow. She was offering me $5 million to disappear gracefully, to become the grateful sister who accepted her charity and spent her life helping other women achieve what she'd been denied. It would be completely separate from Chen Technologies, Sophia added. Your own kingdom, so to speak. No interference from me, no corporate politics. Just you, making a positive impact on the world. $5 million was more money than I'd ever imagined having. It was enough to start over, to build something meaningful, to live comfortably for the rest of my life. A year ago, I would have been grateful for such generosity. But a year ago, I hadn't known that my sister was capable of orchestrating elaborate cons, manipulating dying fathers, and possibly worse. That's incredibly generous, I said carefully. Can I think about it? Of course, but Maya, I hope you'll consider it seriously. I really do want what's best for you. We're the only family we have left now. The only family we have left, She was right about that, in the most twisted way possible. After dinner, I returned to my apartment with a head full of revelations and a phone full of incriminating photos. Sophia's journal had revealed the scope of her planning, but it had also exposed something she probably didn't realize herself. For all her manipulation and strategic thinking, Sophia had one critical flaw. She was documenting everything. The journal wasn't just a confession. It was a manual, a step-by-step guide to stealing someone's life, which meant I could follow the same playbook. If Sophia could fabricate marketing expertise and business relationships, I could fabricate whatever identity I needed to infiltrate her world. If she could manipulate people's perceptions and create fictional narratives, so could I. But I wouldn't just steal her inheritance money. That was thinking too small. Sophia had taken my entire identity as the competent daughter, the business-minded heir, the person Dad could trust with his legacy. So I would take hers. Her reputation, her relationships, her carefully curated image of success and sophistication. I would become Sophia Chen, and she would become nobody. The plan began forming in my mind as I sat in my cramped apartment, staring at the photos of her journal entries. She thought she understood strategy, but she'd only been playing checkers. It was time to teach her how to play chess. The transformation began with a haircut. I walked into Salon Mystique, the same Beverly Hills establishment where Sophia had maintained her image for years, carrying a photograph and wearing confidence I didn't yet feel. The stylist, a whip-thin woman named Celeste with geometric tattoos covering her arms, studied the picture with professional interest. "You want to look exactly like her?" she asked, holding up the photo of Sophia at a charity gala from last month. "Not exactly like her," I corrected. "I want to look like her, but better." 3 hours later, I walked out with Sophia's signature blonde waves, but cut and styled to enhance my features rather than copy hers. The difference was subtle but crucial. I looked like Sophia's more polished, more confident sister, which, technically, I was. The hair was just the beginning. Over the next 2 weeks, I systematically studied every aspect of Sophia's public persona. I analyzed her social media posts, memorized her favorite restaurants, and learned the names of her friends and business contacts. I read every magazine interview she'd given, watched every video of her speaking at charity events, and practiced her mannerisms until they became second nature. But the real work wasn't about copying Sophia. It was about becoming someone who could dismantle her from the inside. My first target was Jennifer Walsh, the fictional marketing consultant whose fabricated work had helped steal my inheritance. According to Sophia's journal, Jennifer was actually a struggling actress named Melissa Torres, who'd been paid to create fake business documents and maintain a false professional identity. Finding Melissa wasn't difficult. A simple Google search of her real name revealed a struggling performer with a modest portfolio of commercial work and an urgent need for money. I called her on a Tuesday morning, introducing myself as a potential client. "I need someone who can create convincing business presentations," I explained over coffee at a trendy cafe in West Hollywood. "Someone with experience in creative documentation." Melissa's face went pale. "Look, I don't know who you are, but if this is about the Chen thing, I already got paid for that job. I don't want any trouble." "I'm not here to cause trouble," I assured her. "I'm here to offer you a much better deal." For $5,000, more than Sophia had paid her for 6 months of work, Melissa provided me with copies of everything she'd created for Sophia. Marketing strategies, business proposals, fake client testimonials. Even the presentation materials that had convinced my father of Sophia's business acumen. But more importantly, she gave me the playbook for creating convincing fiction. "The key," Melissa explained as she handed over a flash drive containing her work, "is mixing real information with fabricated details." Sophia gave me actual market research and financial data, then I just enhanced it, made it look like she was the one who'd done the analysis. Enhanced. She'd taken my work, because I'd compiled most of Chen Technologies' market research, and repackaged it as Sophia's innovative thinking. Armed with Melissa's methods and Sophia's documented strategies, I began phase 1 of my counterattack, establishing credibility within Sophia's own circles. The opportunity came through Marcus Webb, a venture capitalist who'd been courting Chen Technologies for months. According to intercepted emails, Sophia was still careless with her passwords. Marcus was interested in acquiring the company as part of a larger tech portfolio. He'd been scheduled to meet with Sophia the following week to discuss terms. I intercepted that meeting. Using information from Sophia's files, I called Marcus's office and rescheduled the appointment, claiming to be Sophia's new assistant. Then I showed up in her place, wearing a navy suit that could have been her twin, carrying a briefcase full of documents that would change everything. "Mr. Webb," I said, extending my hand as I walked into his corner office. "Thank you for making time to meet with me. I'm Maya Chen, Sophia's sister and the Chief Strategy Officer for Chen Technologies." Chief Strategy Officer. A title that didn't exist at our company, but sounded impressive enough to grant me credibility. Marcus was a silver-haired man in his 60s with the kind of sharp eyes that miss nothing. He studied me carefully as we shook hands. "I was expecting to meet with Sophia," he said. "Sophia asked me to handle the preliminary discussions," I replied smoothly. "She's been dealing with some family matters lately. Our father's recent passing has been difficult for her, but she wanted to ensure that promising opportunities like this weren't delayed." It was a perfect explanation. Sympathetic, professional, and impossible to verify without seeming insensitive. "I understand completely," Marcus said, his expression softening. "Please, have a seat. Sophia spoke very highly of your strategic planning capabilities." Had she? That was interesting, considering Sophia barely acknowledged my existence anymore. "I've brought some materials that I think will interest you," I continued, opening my briefcase. "Our market analysis shows tremendous growth potential, but we need the right partner to capitalize on emerging opportunities." The documents I presented were masterpieces of creative accounting. Using Melissa's techniques, I'd taken Chen Technologies' actual financial data and projected it forward with aggressive growth assumptions. The numbers were technically accurate but painted a picture of a company poised for explosive expansion, rather than the modest growth trajectory we were actually experiencing. Marcus reviewed the materials with growing excitement. "These projections are impressive," he said, "but they seem quite ambitious. What's your confidence level in achieving these targets?" "High," I said without hesitation, "but only with the right strategic partnership. We need access to larger markets and additional capital to fund our expansion plans." I'd been managing Chen Technologies' operations for 3 years. I knew exactly what the company needed to grow, and I knew which obstacles were preventing that growth. The difference was that now I was presenting solutions instead of just identifying problems. "The challenge," I continued, "is that we need a partner who understands our vision and can provide not just capital but strategic guidance. Someone who's successfully scaled technology companies before." Marcus leaned forward, clearly engaged. "What kind of partnership structure are you envisioning?" "We're open to various arrangements," I said. "Joint ventures, equity partnerships, even acquisition scenarios if the terms align with our long-term objectives." For the next 2 hours, we discussed market strategies, growth projections, and partnership possibilities. Marcus asked detailed questions about our technology, our competitive advantages, and our expansion plans. Thanks to my years of operational experience, I could answer everything with confidence and specificity. When the meeting ended, Marcus walked me to the elevator personally. "Maya, this has been incredibly productive. I'd like to schedule a follow-up meeting next week with my full investment team. Can you arrange that?" "Absolutely. I'll coordinate with Sophia and get back to you with some options." As the elevator doors closed, I saw Marcus returning to his office with obvious excitement, already reaching for his phone to call someone about the promising opportunity he'd just discovered. I'd done exactly what Sophia had done to steal my inheritance. I'd presented myself as the competent Chen sister with the vision and expertise to grow the company. The difference was that in my case, it was actually true. But establishing credibility was only the first step. The real work began when I returned home and opened my laptop to begin Phase 2, systematic infiltration of Sophia's professional network. Using the contact list I'd memorized from her phone, I began reaching out to her business associates, art gallery clients, and charity board members. The approach was always the same. I was Maya Chen, Sophia's sister and business partner, following up on projects that Sophia was too busy to handle personally. To Rebecca Martinez, the director of the Contemporary Art Museum where Sophia served on the board. Sophia asked me to coordinate with you about the upcoming fundraising gala. She's been swamped with business commitments lately. To David Kim, a tech journalist who'd been planning to profile Sophia for Forbes. Sophia thought it might be interesting to include a family perspective in the article. I've been her strategic advisor for years. To Amanda Foster, Sophia's personal stylist, Sophia mentioned that you might be able to help me prepare for some upcoming business presentations. She speaks so highly of your work. Each conversation was carefully crafted to establish my presence in Sophia's world while subtly undermining her position. I wasn't trying to replace her immediately. That would be too obvious. Instead, I was becoming the more reliable Chen sister, the one who actually followed through on commitments and delivered results. The strategy was working better than I'd hoped. Within a week, I'd received callback requests from 3 investment firms, 2 potential clients, and an invitation to speak at a Women in Business conference that Sophia had apparently committed to but never confirmed. But the real breakthrough came when James Bradford called me directly. "Maya," he said, his voice carrying a note of frustration I hadn't heard before. "I've been trying to reach Sophia for 3 days about the quarterly financial review. She's not returning my calls, and we need to present them to the board next week." The quarterly financial review. I'd been preparing those reports for 3 years before Sophia took over. I knew every number, every projection, every potential concern the board might raise. "She's been dealing with some personal issues," I said sympathetically. "Family estate matters, you understand. But I can help with the financial review if you need assistance." "Would you? That would be incredibly helpful. To be honest, I'm not sure Sophia fully understands some of the operational complexities." James Bradford, Sophia's handpicked CFO, was admitting that his boss didn't understand the business she'd inherited. "Of course," I replied. "I'll come in tomorrow morning and we can review everything together." As I hung up the phone, I realized that Sophia's greatest weakness was the same arrogance that had enabled her initial success. She'd assumed that stealing the company would automatically grant her the competence to run it. She'd never considered that her victims might fight back using her own methods. But I wasn't just fighting back anymore. I was winning. And the best part was that Sophia had no idea the game had even begun. The annual Tech Innovation Awards Gala was Sophia's idea of a perfect stage. 200 of the industry's most influential figures gathered in the ballroom of the Four Seasons, with media coverage that would cement her reputation as a visionary leader. She'd spent weeks planning her appearance, commissioning a custom Valentino gown and practicing her acceptance speech for the Emerging Leader Award she was certain to receive. She had no idea she was walking into her own execution. I arrived at the gala 30 minutes before Sophia, wearing an identical Valentino gown in midnight blue instead of her chosen emerald green. The dress had cost me $8,000, nearly my entire savings. But it was worth every penny to see the look of confusion and fury that would cross her face when she realized we were wearing the same designer. But matching dresses were the least of her concerns tonight. "Maya Chen," I announced to the registration table, my voice carrying the confidence of someone who belonged in this world. "I'm representing Chen Technologies this evening." The volunteer checked her list, frowning slightly. "I have Sophia Chen listed as the representative for Chen Technologies." "There's been a change in plans," I said smoothly, handing her a business card that identified me as Chief Strategy Officer. "Sophia asked me to handle tonight's presentation. She's dealing with some urgent business matters." Before the volunteer could protest, Marcus Webb appeared at my elbow. "Maya, perfect timing. I've been telling everyone about our conversation last week. There are some people I'd like you to meet." Marcus guided me into the crowd, introducing me to investors, journalists, and industry leaders as the brilliant strategist behind Chen Technologies' expansion plans. Each introduction built on the last, creating a web of credibility that would be impossible for Sophia to untangle once she arrived. "Maya has some fascinating insights about market consolidation in the cloud storage sector," Marcus told Rachel Stone, a tech reporter from Forbes. "You should definitely include her perspective in your industry analysis." "I'd love to schedule an interview," Rachel replied, pulling out her phone. "Would next week work for you?" "Absolutely. I think you'll find that Chen Technologies has some unique advantages that haven't been widely recognized yet." It was true. We did have unique advantages. Advantages that Sophia had never bothered to understand because she'd been too busy playing CEO to actually learn the business. By the time Sophia made her grand entrance, I'd already spoken with 14 journalists, 6 potential investors, and 3 industry analysts. The narrative was set. Maya Chen was the strategic mind behind Chen Technologies, the sister who understood both the technology and the market dynamics that would drive future growth. Homage. Sophia swept into the ballroom like a Hollywood starlet, her emerald gown catching the light as photographers captured her arrival. She paused for pictures, smiled for the cameras, and graciously accepted congratulations from admirers who approached her. For 15 minutes, she was the queen of the evening. Then she saw me. I was standing near the bar, engaged in an animated conversation with David Chen, no relation, despite the shared surname, who served on the boards of 3 major tech companies. David was laughing at something I'd said about market disruption patterns, clearly enjoying our discussion. Sophia's smile froze. Her eyes locked onto my dress, my hair, my confident posture among the industry elite. I caught her gaze across the room and offered a small wave, as if surprised to see her there. She excused herself from her admirers and cut through the crowd toward me, her expression carefully controlled but her eyes blazing with fury. "Maya," she said through gritted teeth, still smiling for anyone who might be watching. "What a surprise to see you here." "Sophia, you look stunning," I replied warmly, leaning in for an air kiss that allowed me to whisper, "We need to talk. Privately." But David Chen stepped forward before she could respond. "You must be Maya's sister," he said, extending his hand to Sophia. "She's been telling me about your company's innovative approach to cloud infrastructure. Fascinating stuff." Sophia's smile became strained. "Thank you. Though I think there might be some confusion about who." "The market analysis Maya presented was particularly insightful," David continued. "Especially her projections about enterprise migration patterns. Very sophisticated thinking." My projections, my analysis. My sophisticated thinking, presented as my own work rather than stolen and repackaged. Sophia's hand tightened around her champagne glass. "David, I appreciate your interest, but perhaps we should clarify some details about our company structure." "Oh, you don't need to be modest," Marcus Webb interrupted, joining our conversation. "Maya was just explaining your strategic partnership model. Brilliant approach to scaling operations while maintaining quality control." Now Sophia was trapped. She couldn't contradict Marcus without seeming unprofessional, but she also couldn't take credit for work she didn't understand. I watched her struggle to find a response that wouldn't expose her ignorance. "Yes, well, strategic partnerships are certainly important," she managed. "Absolutely," I agreed, though the implementation details can be quite complex. The key is matching partnership structures to operational capabilities while maintaining technological integrity. I was speaking in deliberate corporate jargon, using terms that sounded impressive but required specific technical knowledge to expand upon. Sophia nodded along, but I could see the panic in her eyes as she realized she had no idea what I was actually saying. "Maya, could I speak with you for a moment?" she asked, her smile becoming more desperate. "Privately?" "Of course. Gentlemen, would you excuse us for just a minute?" I followed Sophia toward a quiet corner of the ballroom, noting how she walked, quick, agitated steps that betrayed her composed facade. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" she hissed once we were out of earshot. "I'm representing Chen Technologies at an industry event," I replied calmly. "Isn't that what you'd want from your chief strategy officer?" "You're not the chief strategy officer. You're not even employed by the company anymore." "Actually, I am. James Bradford reinstated me yesterday after reviewing our operational needs for the upcoming board presentation. Didn't he mention that to you?" Sophia's face went pale. "That's impossible." "Is it? James called me last week because he needed help with the quarterly financial review. Apparently, there were some gaps in institutional knowledge that needed to be addressed." The truth was even more devastating than my casual tone suggested. James hadn't just reinstated me. He'd essentially admitted that Sophia was failing as CEO. The quarterly numbers were a disaster, client relationships were deteriorating, and the board was asking questions that Sophia couldn't answer. "You manipulative little—" "Sophia! Maya!" A cheerful voice interrupted our confrontation. Rebecca Martinez, the museum director, approached with a warm smile. I was hoping to catch you both tonight. Sophia, I wanted to thank Maya for stepping in with the gala planning. She's been absolutely indispensable. Gala planning? Sophia's voice cracked slightly. The fundraising gala for the Children's Hospital, Rebecca explained. Maya coordinated everything after you had to cancel due to your business commitments. We raised over $200,000. Maya's auction organization was brilliant. I had indeed organized the charity auction, using contacts from Sophia's own network, presenting myself as her representative while she was too busy with corporate responsibilities. The event had been a tremendous success, cementing my reputation among the charitable elite that formed the backbone of Sophia's social circle. That's wonderful, Sophia managed. And the art collection you donated? Maya. Absolutely stunning pieces. Your curatorial eye is exquisite. The art collection. I donated 3 pieces from Dad's personal collection, pieces that Sophia had claimed for herself after his death, but never formally transferred. Legally, they still belonged to the estate, which meant I had as much right to donate them as she did. Rebecca excused herself to greet other guests, leaving Sophia and me alone again. But the damage was done. In the span of 5 minutes, Sophia had discovered that I'd not only infiltrated her professional network, but had also established myself as a more reliable and competent representative of our family's interests. This ends now, she said quietly, her mask of civility finally slipping. Whatever game you think you're playing, it's over. Game? I looked genuinely confused. Sophia, I'm not playing any game. I'm just doing what you taught me. What I taught you? How to take someone's life. I smiled sweetly. You showed me how to steal someone's identity, how to manipulate their relationships, how to turn their own strengths against them. I've been an excellent student. For the first time since this whole ordeal began, Sophia looked genuinely afraid. The difference is, I continued, I actually earned everything I'm taking. These people aren't impressed by me because I've lied to them. They're impressed because I actually know what I'm talking about. A photographer approached us, camera raised. Excuse me, are you the Chen sisters from Chen Technologies? Could I get a photo for the industry magazine? Of course, I said brightly, putting my arm around Sophia's shoulders. We're always happy to represent our company. As the flash went off, capturing our image for posterity, I whispered in Sophia's ear, "Smile, sister, this is just the beginning." The photographer thanked us and moved on, but Sophia remained frozen in place, staring at me as if seeing me for the first time. "You can't do this," she whispered. "I'm not doing anything," I replied. "I'm just being myself." The real question is, who are you when you can't steal someone else's work? That night, I went home knowing that everything had changed. The public confrontation had served its purpose, establishing my credibility while exposing Sophia's incompetence. But more than that, it had revealed the fundamental flaw in her strategy. Sophia had stolen my inheritance by convincing Dad that she was the better choice to lead his company. But she'd never actually become capable of leading that company. She'd assumed that authority would somehow grant her competence. I, on the other hand, had spent years actually learning how to run Chen Technologies. And now I was using that knowledge to systematically dismantle everything she'd built on lies. The war wasn't over, but tonight had been my Normandy. And Sophia finally understood that she wasn't fighting a victim anymore. She was fighting an enemy who knew all her weaknesses because I'd been watching her exploit mine for months. The hunter had become the hunted. The emergency board meeting was called for 8 a.m. on a Monday morning, exactly 72 hours after the Tech Innovation Awards Gala. I arrived at Chen Technologies 30 minutes early, carrying a leather portfolio that contained everything I needed to complete Sophia's destruction. The conference room was already buzzing with tension when I entered. 6 board members sat around the polished mahogany table, their faces grave as they reviewed documents that James Bradford had distributed. At the head of the table sat Elizabeth Morrison, our lead board member, and a woman whose steel gray hair matched her unforgiving reputation for corporate accountability. "Maya," Elizabeth said, looking up as I entered, "thank you for coming. Please, take a seat." I chose the chair directly across from where Sophia would sit, a position that would force her to look at me throughout the proceedings. James Bradford nodded at me from his position near the financial projections displayed on the wall screen. "Where is Sophia?" asked Robert Kim, the youngest board member and a former colleague of Dad's from his startup days. "She should be here any moment," Elizabeth replied, checking her watch. "Though given the circumstances, perhaps we should begin with the preliminary findings." The circumstances. That phrase carried more weight than anyone in the room yet understood. James cleared his throat and stood, his expression more serious than I'd ever seen it. "Board members, what I'm about to present represents the most significant corporate governance failure in Chen Technologies' history." He clicked to the first slide, which showed a simple timeline spanning the past 8 months. 3 days ago, during routine preparation for our quarterly board presentation, we discovered systematic irregularities in our financial reporting, strategic documentation, and operational oversight. Another click. The screen now displayed 2 columns of numbers, projected versus actual performance for the past 6 months. The strategic projections that informed the board's approval of our current business plan were based on fabricated market research and falsified consultant reports. I watched the board members' faces as they absorbed this information. Elizabeth's expression didn't change, but her fingers tightened around her pen. Robert Kim leaned forward, studying the numbers with obvious concern. "The consultant in question, Jennifer Walsh of Walsh Strategic Solutions, does not exist," James continued. "The business license is fraudulent, the client references are fabricated, and the strategic recommendations were plagiarized from existing industry reports." This was the moment I'd been waiting for. The board was about to learn that their CEO had built her entire business case on lies. "Furthermore," James said, advancing to the next slide, "our operational performance has declined significantly since the implementation of these strategies. Client retention is down 18%, employee turnover has increased by 34%, and we've lost 3 major contracts due to what our clients describe as, quote, lack of strategic direction." The conference room fell silent, except for the hum of the air conditioning system. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see the morning traffic beginning to build on the streets below, the ordinary world continuing while our corporate universe collapsed. "Who authorized the use of this consultant?" Elizabeth asked, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "According to our records, the engagement was personally approved by CEO Sophia Chen." At that moment, Sophia burst through the conference room doors, her usually perfect appearance slightly disheveled. Her designer suit was wrinkled, her hair less than perfectly styled, and there were dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't entirely conceal. "I'm sorry I'm late," she said breathlessly. "There was an emergency with—" She stopped mid-sentence as she took in the scene. The board members' stern faces, the damning financial projections on the screen, and my presence at the table. "What is Maya doing here?" she demanded. Elizabeth gestured to an empty chair. "Sophia, please sit down. We have serious matters to discuss." Sophia remained standing, her eyes darting between the board members and the evidence displayed behind James. "If this is about the quarterly numbers, I can explain." "Sit down, Sophia." Elizabeth's tone brooked no argument. Sophia reluctantly took her seat, directly across from me as I'd planned. For the first time since this ordeal began, she looked smaller than me, diminished and defensive. "James was just reviewing some concerning findings about our strategic planning process," Elizabeth continued. "Specifically, the fraudulent consultant reports that formed the basis of your business proposals." Sophia's face went pale, but she tried to maintain her composure. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. Jennifer Walsh came highly recommended." "Jennifer Walsh doesn't exist," Robert Kim interrupted. "We've had her credentials independently verified. Everything is fabricated." "That's impossible. I worked with her for months." "You worked with an actress named Melissa Torres," I said quietly, speaking for the first time since the meeting began. "She provided us with copies of everything she created for you, including the scripts for your phone conversations and the template documents she used to forge business proposals." Sophia's composure cracked. "Maya, what are you? How did you—" "The question," Elizabeth said, her voice deadly calm, is how you obtained the original market research and financial data that Ms. Torres incorporated into her fabricated reports. This was the trap I'd spent weeks constructing. The market research that formed the foundation of Jennifer Walsh's fake proposals had come from my own work, analysis I'd conducted over 3 years of managing Chen Technologies operations. But Sophia had claimed it as evidence of her own strategic thinking. "I don't understand the accusation," Sophia said, but her voice lacked conviction. James advanced to the next slide, which showed a side-by-side comparison of 2 documents. On the left is a strategic analysis prepared by Maya Chen in her capacity as Chief Operating Officer, dated 14 months ago. On the right is substantially the same analysis, repackaged as a proposal by Jennifer Walsh and submitted as evidence of Sophia's business acumen. The plagiarism was undeniable. Even the charts and graphs were identical, just reformatted with different headers. Maya's original analysis was accurate and insightful, James continued. Unfortunately, the fabricated version contained mathematical errors that have led to significant strategic miscalculations. Mathematical errors. Melissa Torres, despite her acting talents, had never studied business or finance. When she'd repackaged my work, she'd made small mistakes, changing numbers she didn't understand, altering projections that seemed conservative to her artistic eye. Those errors had compounded over months, leading Chen Technologies down increasingly problematic strategic paths. "Board members," I said, standing slowly, "I believe I can provide some clarity on this situation." Elizabeth nodded. "Please proceed." I opened my portfolio and removed a stack of documents I'd prepared for this moment. 8 months ago, my sister approached me about developing a strategic analysis for potential business expansion. She said she wanted to contribute more meaningfully to our father's company. This was a carefully constructed lie, but one that Sophia couldn't contradict without admitting to her larger deception. I provided her with my research and analysis, assuming she would use it to better understand our business model. I had no idea she intended to present my work as her own to justify changes in corporate leadership. "That's not true," Sophia protested, but her voice was weak. "I have email communications confirming these conversations," I continued, removing printed copies from my portfolio, including Sophia's request for detailed financial projections that would impress Dad, and her assurance that she would, quote, "give me full credit for the analytical work." The emails were real. I'd sent them to myself from Sophia's account during one of my reconnaissance visits to her apartment, backdating them to create a plausible timeline. Corporate espionage wasn't admirable, but then again, neither was inheritance fraud. Elizabeth reviewed the documents with the methodical attention of someone who'd spent decades evaluating corporate malfeasance. "Sophia, do you dispute the authenticity of these communications?" Sophia stared at the papers as if they might spontaneously combust. She was trapped between 2 impossible choices: admit to creating fabricated consultant reports, or acknowledge that she'd stolen my work and misrepresented it to the board. There may have been some confusion about attribution," she began. "Confusion?" Robert Kim's voice carried a dangerous edge. "Sophia, you used falsified documents to justify a corporate restructuring that has cost this company millions of dollars and damaged relationships built over decades. The board trusted your representations about your strategic capabilities," Elizabeth added. "Based on what we're seeing today, that trust appears to have been fundamentally misplaced." James advanced to the final slide, which showed a stark comparison: company performance under my operational leadership versus the decline under Sophia's strategic direction. "Maya," Elizabeth said, turning to me, "in your professional opinion, how should we address these operational challenges?" This was the question I'd been preparing for since the day Sophia stole my inheritance. Not just how to expose her fraud, but how to position myself as the solution to the problem she'd created. "Board members," I said, my voice steady and confident, "I believe Chen Technologies can recover from these setbacks, but only with honest leadership and a return to operational fundamentals. We need to rebuild client relationships, restore employee confidence, and implement strategies based on actual market data rather than fabricated projections." "Are you prepared to take on that responsibility?" Elizabeth asked. Sophia's gasp was audible. She finally understood where this was leading. If the board believes I can contribute to Chen Technologies' recovery, I replied, I'm prepared to serve in whatever capacity best serves our stakeholders. Elizabeth looked around the table, making eye contact with each board member. The vote, when it came, was unanimous. Sophia Chen, effective immediately, you are removed as Chief Executive Officer of Chen Technologies. Maya Chen, you are appointed as Interim CEO, pending a formal review of corporate governance procedures. Sophia's world collapsed in that conference room at 9:47 a.m. on a Monday morning. She sat frozen in her chair, staring at the table as if she couldn't comprehend what had just happened. The board will also be conducting a full investigation into the misuse of corporate resources and potential securities fraud, Elizabeth added. Sophia, you should consider retaining legal counsel. Legal counsel. Securities fraud. The words hung in the air like a death sentence for Sophia's reputation, and possibly her freedom. As the board members filed out, Sophia remained seated, her hands trembling slightly as reality set in. She'd lost everything in the span of 30 minutes. Her position, her credibility, her carefully constructed image of success. I gathered my materials slowly, savoring the moment. When only the two of us remained in the conference room, Sophia finally looked up at me. How? She whispered. I learned from the best, I replied. You taught me that competence without political skill means nothing, but you forgot the most important lesson. Real competence always wins in the end. I walked toward the door, then paused and turned back. Oh, and Sophia, the Chen Foundation you offered me? I've decided to accept. The board approved $5 million in funding this morning. I'll be helping women who've been systematically undermined by people they trusted. Her face crumpled as the final irony hit her. The charitable foundation she'd designed as my consolation prize had become the vehicle for my victory. Enjoy explaining to your creditors why you can't pay them back, I added. I hear bankruptcy attorneys are very understanding about these situations. As I left the conference room, I could hear Sophia beginning to cry, but I felt no satisfaction in her tears. I felt justice. 6 months later, I stood in the renovated lobby of Chen Technologies, watching workers install a new company motto, where innovation through unity had once hung. The new words, etched in brushed steel, read simply, integrity through excellence. It had taken half a year to undo the damage Sophia had caused, but the transformation was remarkable. Client retention had recovered to pre-crisis levels, employee morale was at an all-time high, and we'd just signed the largest contract in company history, a cloud infrastructure deal with Marcus Webb's investment firm that would double our annual revenue. Ms. Chen, Janet Rodriguez approached with a tablet in her hands. After everything that had happened, she'd insisted on the formal address, saying it felt more appropriate for a CEO than the casual Maya she'd used when I was just another employee. The reporter from Forbes is here for your interview, she continued. Should I show her to your office? My office. Dad's old office, which I'd restored to something closer to his original design while adding my own touches. The family photos were back, including a new one of me accepting the Tech Leader of the Year award I'd won last month. The same award Sophia had expected to receive at the gala where everything changed. Give me 5 minutes, then send her up, I replied. I took the elevator to the executive floor, walking past Sophia's former domain toward the corner office that was now mine by right rather than theft. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see the city stretching toward the horizon, full of possibilities that hadn't existed when I was trapped in Sophia's shadow. Rachel Stone from Forbes was younger than I'd expected, probably in her early 30s, with the sharp, curious eyes of someone who'd built her career on asking the right questions. She was already seated in one of the leather chairs arranged around a small conference table, a setup designed for collaboration rather than intimidation. Ms. Chen, thank you for making time for this interview, she said, pulling out a digital recorder. I understand you've had quite a journey to reach this position. Quite a journey. That was one way to describe having your life systematically destroyed by your own sister, then rebuilding it from the ground up. It's been educational, I replied, settling into the chair across from her. Sometimes the most valuable lessons come from the most challenging experiences. Let's start with the transition period after your father's death. The business world was surprised when your sister initially inherited control of Chen Technologies, given your operational background. Can you walk me through that time? This was the question I'd been preparing for since agreeing to the interview. The public narrative of Chen Technologies' recent corporate changes had been carefully managed. Sophia's removal was attributed to strategic differences and performance issues rather than outright fraud. The board had decided that protecting the company's reputation was more important than public vindication of her crimes. But there were ways to tell the truth without destroying what we'd rebuilt. My father's decision to initially name Sophia as his successor was based on information that later proved to be incomplete, I said carefully. He was making choices during a very difficult time in his life, when he was fighting cancer and facing his own mortality. Unfortunately, some people took advantage of his vulnerability. Are you suggesting that your sister misrepresented her qualifications? I'm suggesting that grief and illness can cloud judgment, and that some individuals are willing to exploit family situations for personal gain. My father trusted people he shouldn't have trusted and made decisions based on incomplete information. Rachel leaned forward, clearly sensing there was more to the story. The board's investigation found evidence of fabricated consultant reports and falsified business documentation. How did those issues come to light? Corporate governance exists for a reason, I replied. When performance suffers and operational problems emerge, responsible boards investigate. In our case, that investigation revealed that key strategic decisions had been based on fraudulent information. Information provided by your sister? Information provided by people my sister trusted, yes. Whether she was aware of the fabrication is a matter for others to determine. It was a diplomatic way of saying that Sophia was either criminally incompetent or criminally fraudulent. Either way, she'd been unfit to lead the company. You've made remarkable progress in rebuilding Chen Technologies' reputation and performance, Rachel continued. What's your leadership philosophy? This was easier ground. I believe in competence over charisma, substance over style. My father built this company on innovation and integrity, and I'm committed to honoring that legacy. But I'm also focused on evolution, adapting to new markets and technologies, while maintaining the core values that made us successful. Speaking of evolution, I understand you've also launched the Chen Foundation for Women in Technology. Can you tell me about that initiative? The Chen Foundation has become one of my greatest sources of pride. Using the $5 million the board had approved, money that had originally been intended as Sophia's bribe to get me to disappear quietly, I'd created a program that provided mentorship, funding, and career support for women who'd been undermined or marginalized in their professional lives. The foundation addresses a specific problem in our industry, I explained. Too many talented women have their contributions minimized, their ideas stolen, or their careers derailed by people who see them as threats rather than assets. We provide both practical support and advocacy to help these women reclaim their professional identities. It sounds like you're speaking from personal experience. I think anyone who's built a career in technology has experienced moments when their contributions were undervalued or unrecognized. The foundation exists to ensure that those moments become learning opportunities rather than career-ending setbacks. After the interview concluded and Rachel had left, I found myself alone in my office as the afternoon sunlight slanted through the windows. On my desk sat 2 items that represented the journey I'd completed. A framed photo of Dad and me at the groundbreaking ceremony for Chen Technologies' first building, and a letter that had arrived that morning. The letter was from Sophia. I'd been expecting it for weeks, ever since the news broke that the federal investigation into securities fraud at Chen Technologies had been quietly concluded without charges being filed. The board's decision to handle everything internally had protected both the company's reputation and Sophia's freedom, though it hadn't protected her from the civil consequences of her actions. The envelope was expensive stationery, the kind Sophia had always preferred for important correspondence. Inside, her handwriting was less controlled than usual, suggesting she'd written and rewritten the letter multiple times. Maya, it began, I know I have no right to contact you after everything that's happened, but I needed you to know that I understand what I did to you and our family. I've spent the last 6 months in therapy, trying to understand how I became someone capable of betraying the people I should have protected. The letter continued for 3 pages, detailing Sophia's recognition of her actions and their consequences. She'd lost her penthouse apartment, her art gallery investment, and most of her social circle. The civil lawsuit filed by Chen Technologies' board had resulted in a settlement that would take her years to pay off. She was working as a junior marketing coordinator at a small firm in Portland, starting over with a salary that was less than what she used to spend on shoes. "I don't expect forgiveness," the letter concluded, "and I don't expect a response. I just wanted you to know that you won, not because you're ruthless like I was, but because you're competent like Dad was. You deserved everything you achieved, and I'm sorry it took destroying our relationship for me to understand that. I hope the company and the foundation bring you the fulfillment that all my schemes never brought me." It was signed simply Sophia, without the elaborate flourishes she'd once used for her signature. I read the letter twice, then filed it away in my desk drawer. Forgiveness might come eventually, but it would take time. Trust, once broken so completely, couldn't be repaired with apologies alone. My phone buzzed with a text message from Marcus Webb. "Dinner tonight to celebrate the new contract? I know a place that serves excellent champagne." Marcus had become more than a business partner over the past few months. Our professional relationship had evolved into something personal, built on mutual respect and shared values rather than manipulation and deception. He knew my full story. I told him everything one evening when he'd asked why I seemed so determined to prove myself, and his response had been simple. "You've already proven yourself. Now it's time to enjoy what you've built." I typed back, "Perfect. I have something to celebrate." As I prepared to leave the office, I walked past the conference room where Sophia's downfall had played out 6 months earlier. The room had been redecorated since then, but I could still remember the moment when Elizabeth Morrison had announced the board's decision to remove Sophia as CEO. The memory didn't bring satisfaction anymore, just a sense of completion, like finishing a difficult puzzle or solving a complex equation. I'd set out to steal my sister's life in revenge for her stealing mine. But somewhere along the way, I discovered something more valuable than revenge: the ability to build a life that was entirely my own. Chen Technologies was stronger than it had ever been. The foundation was changing lives every day, and I was no longer Maya Chen, the overlooked daughter fighting for recognition. I was Maya Chen, the CEO who'd transformed crisis into opportunity. As I walked through the lobby toward the parking garage, I passed the new company motto one more time: integrity through excellence. It wasn't just a slogan, it was a promise to our clients, our employees, and to Dad's memory. But most importantly, it was a promise to myself that I would never again allow anyone to steal what I'd built, because I'd finally learned the difference between taking someone's life and creating your own. The city lights were beginning to twinkle as I drove toward dinner with Marcus, toward a future that belonged entirely to me. In my rearview mirror, Chen Technologies stood tall against the evening sky, its windows glowing with the light of honest work and earned success. I'd won more than just my inheritance back. I'd won my life back. And this time, no one could take it away from me. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.